Hi guys! Today, our team will be doing a presentation on Domino's Pizza and the challenges they might face when expanding to a country with a very different culture to their home country. We'll discuss these issues in depth and come up with recommended solutions that might aid them in overcoming these barriers. In our team, we have 3 members, which consist of Kellen, me, and Vera. Kellen will be talking about cultural profiles and the issues with adopting and promoting corporate cultures. I will be touching on introduction, country profiles, work ethics, and behavior issues. And Vera will present on Domino's corporate culture, recruitment, and selection issues, and finally wrap up the presentation with a conclusion. We will first be diving deeper into Domino's with regards to their history, followed by an overview of both their home and host countries. We will then touch on the cultural profiles of both countries and how they differ, which is important as a country's culture usually plays a big influence on how their respective corporate culture turns out. We will then take turns to discuss one cultural challenges each, followed by our own recommendations. Finally, we'll wrap things up with our own conclusion. And now, we have a cute little map that shows both Domino's home and host countries. Well, Domino's Pizza has its roots in 1960s when 2 brothers, Tom and James Monaghan, opened their first store in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Surprisingly enough, the first iteration of Domino's was actually named Dominic's Pizza. In what is probably the worst trade in pizza history, one of the brothers, James, traded over his half of the company in exchange for a Volkswagen Beetle. Domino's opened its 1000th store in 1983. During that time, it also made its first international foray in Canada, in the city of Winnipeg. Presently, there are well over 17,000 stores, with more than 10,000 of them outside of their home country of the United States. Well, while doing our research on Domino's, our teammate Vera found this really short and funny Domino's ad, so enjoy!
Domino's is the country's #1 pizza delivery company.
How do we make so many? No. No! No. No.
The secret to every handmade Domino's pizza is hands.
Take it away, Tom. Every Domino's is handmade, fresh to order, just the way you like it, every time.
Now, the home country of Domino's, the United States of America, has a population of over 300 million people. With a GDP of around $20 trillion US, the average income of each citizen comes up to approximately $33,000. Their demographics is made up of a majority of white Caucasians at 76.3%, while African Americans come in next at 13.4%. Asians and Native Americans make up the minority at 5.9% and 1.3% respectively. While religion is not a commonly discussed factor in business dealings, in order to better understand a country's identity and culture, we do have to take it into account as it plays a big influence on it. The 3 major religious affiliations in the United States are Christianity at 43%, non-religious at 26%, and Roman Catholicism at 20%. Now, their host country, the island state of Singapore, has a population just under 6 million people, with a GDP of around 500 billion Singapore dollars. While their host country lags behind in terms of GDP, it makes up for it with the average income of each citizen coming up to around $67,000. This makes it a much more lucrative market for Domino's to enter as their host country citizens have much more buying power than their home country citizens. The demographics consist of a majority of ethnic Chinese at 76%, with Malays coming in next at 15% and Indians at 7.5%. The remainder is made up of other minority races at 1.5%. The major religions in Singapore are Buddhism at 43.2%, Christianity at 18.8%, Islam at 14%, and finally, Hinduism at 5%. Both countries share a substantial percentage of Christians, which is useful to know, especially when planning promotions in the host country, such as Christmas discounts.
Hi everyone, this is Kellen. I will be discussing about the cultural profile in these 4 aspects, which are the general manners, business associates, when meeting with strangers, and trusting. Number 1. General manners. Although the United States is a mixed culture country, there is no widely accepted rules on how to greet. You just need to be polite and remember to maintain the proper distance. Do not get too personal and don't ask prying questions. However, although Singapore is also a mixed-race country, you will be expected to know about the different cultural background of no matter Chinese or Malay or Indian to better adjust what to do and what not to do when doing business in Singapore. For example, if they are Malay, you may wish to avoid scheduling meetings on Friday. If they're Chinese, firmly shaking hands is needed and is usually enough. No more other body contact is necessary. Number 3, when meeting with strangers. In the States, it is common to shake hands with others, but in Singapore, this depends on the ethnicity group. Malay and Indian may not wish to shake hands with opposite gender. Number 4, trusting. Although it varies among Chinese, Indian, and Malay in general, Singaporeans are cautious and tend to make sure that they are doing business with the right person. American culture is more straightforward, and this might cause some misunderstandings in Singapore. Compared with the American culture, Singapore culture is more relationship-based, while the Americans more task-based. Therefore, the personal contracts is important in Singapore, and you may wish to establish a genuine relation with Singaporean counterpart, and this takes time.
There is a certain organizational structure that is well suited for the food and beverage companies, and that is the hierarchical structures. These industries have high turnover rates, especially among the frontline employees. The best way to deal with this effectively is to have employees dedicated to one job in each section of the operation. In the US, they do that with a hierarchical organizational structure. However, in Singapore, the structure is more traditional, bureaucratic. While bureaucracy and hierarchical structures are similar in many ways, bureaucracy tends to have more decisions passed from top to bottom, and it is a more complex structure. For example, for customer service, press 1. For delivery, press 2. To leave a message, press 3. 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. If you see the review on Glassdoor here, you can see by what they wrote that Domino's is good for people who have just entered the workforce, but it is hectic and work balance is bad. You must be willing to sacrifice a lot of time due to many shifts. Looking at the first cultural challenge, which deals with recruiting and selecting employees and managers, we can look at masculinity and femininity. The masculinity side of this dimension represents a preference in society for achievement, heroism, assertiveness, and material rewards for success. Society at large is more competitive. Its opposite, femininity, stands for a preference for cooperation, modesty, caring for the weak, and quality of life. Society at large is more conscientious-oriented. In the business context, masculinity versus femininity is sometimes also related to as tough versus tender cultures. By using the Global Gender Gap Index, we can determine this cultural challenge of recruiting and selecting employees. Overall, the US ranked 53rd and Singapore ranked 54th. In economic participation and opportunity, the US ranked 26th and Singapore ranked 20th. But take a look at the fourth one, legislators, senior officials, and managers, ranked 22nd in the US, whereas in Singapore ranked 62. This shows that senior officials and managers are not widely recognized in Singapore. Furthermore, women are less likely to be selected in recruitment due to the chances of maternal leave. There is a negative relationship between a woman's wage and the number of children she has. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the motherhood penalty amounts to about 7% wage reduction per child. In order for Domino's host country to become more accepting towards female managers, HR should educate both managers and employees, communication, and interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills that would help gender inequality includes conflict management, empathy, and teamwork. HR should also educate employees on their own unconscious bias. Unconscious bias are social stereotypes about certain groups that people form outside their conscious awareness, so it becomes a practice that people don't notice in the workplace, so HR needs to spread that awareness. Also, the Domino's Pizza in the US has a clear policy on discrimination which should also be implemented to its host country as well.
Hey guys, I will now be discussing on the challenges of expanding to a country with a very different working culture. As you can see from this slide, the biggest difference in both Singapore and American cultures are individualism, uncertainty avoidance, and power distance, which we will be talking about. Now, in terms of power distances, Singapore is on the higher side of the spectrum, and this is probably due to Confucian teachings, which is highly prevalent in Buddhism, one of the main religions in Singapore I have mentioned previously. Power is usually centralized, and the work culture is very hierarchical. This means that employees expect to be told what to do by their superiors, communication is pretty indirect, and information flow is selective. This high power distance might also lead to abuse of power due to its inherent hierarchical nature. Now, America, on the other hand, has a lower power distance, and this is probably due to their country's history. This identity is very ingrained in its history, laws, and culture. For example, the First Amendment. While in every corporate culture, a small degree of control is expected, power is pretty decentralized in American working culture, unlike Singapore's, and work is usually delegated to subordinates who are expected to be independent and resourceful. The communication stream between superiors and employees is open and two ways. Now, I have come up with several recommendations to bridge this power distance gap between the home and host country. Corporate heads from the host country should start off by establishing that the corporate culture is very different from the usual, so that their employees do not expect the usual type of working culture from their superiors. This also helps to reinforce locally hired management not to behave in a high power distance manner. Next up, they should also try to shorten the power distances by hosting company events, such as team building events, where employees get the opportunity to befriend their superiors outside of a work context, so that they will be less intimidated by them and find them more approachable. Employers should also adopt an open door policy where employees are able to approach their superiors when they have any queries or feedback. An anonymous feedback system is really useful for employees who are used to high power distance cultures, but they feel too uncomfortable, shy, or afraid to openly approach their superiors. It also helps detect any possible abuse of authority by superiors. Now, I believe that if you implement all these solutions in tandem, it would help to lower the power distance between the host and the home country.
Now it comes to the third challenge, the issues in promoting and adopting corporate culture. To better understand this, I'm gonna discuss this from the individualism versus collectivism perspective. Let's have a look at the graph first. As shown in this graph, United States has a score of 91. This is the highest individualism among the countries illustrated. Individualism is the degree to which society believes that an individual should be self-sufficient. From here, we can say that in American culture, individuals are more expected to be independent and know how to organize to do tasks by themselves, like how to get things solved, etc. Although Singapore is not included in this graph, we can consider it to be approximately around the average score of Japan, Indonesia, Hong Kong, and mainland China, which is 26.25. This number shows rather weak individualism. Therefore, we're going to talk about collectivism. According to Doling, there are two kinds of collectivism. The first one is called institutional collectivism, the degree to which organizational and societal institutional practices encourage and reward collective distribution of resources and collective action. The second one is called in-group collectivism. It is the degree to which individuals express pride, loyalty, and/or cohesiveness in their organizations or families. The common point for these two types of collectivism is that an individual is regarded as a part of a group of people, and the individual's behaviors can represent the group to some extent. This is a graph showing the individualism index of the United States and Singapore. As we can see, the United States is in the lower left quarter as highlighted with a score around 92, and Singapore is in the upper right quarter with a score around 18. The difference between Singapore and the United States is quite obvious, and this is why Domino's would have to pay attention to the issues in adopting and promoting corporate culture. To briefly conclude, the key point for collectivism is harmony, and the key point for individualism is the individual's preferences. In the case of Domino's management, seeking balance between collectivism and individualism is the key to survive in Singapore, and this is what we call universalism. There are two recommendations for Domino's. The first one is about adaptation. Domino's should be aware of the institutional collectivism, which requires active encouragement and rewards to achievements. This is distinct from the sense of self-achievement and individualism. In collectivism, the praise from senior managers or from the organizations is much more valuable, and it's pivotal as an honor to the staff. Therefore, it is suggested that Domino's can build up specific award system. For example, like awards the employees prizes for full attendance in a month, select from the employees who have good performance and have been working for Domino's for like maybe 5 to 6 years to take manager position in other newly opened outlets in Singapore, which gives a quite clear motivation to employees. The second one is about adherence. As an American company, Domino's also needs to promote its cultural requirements for employees as well. It's suggested that Domino's can look at stimulation to employees in Singapore market. In general, the promotion prospect is more relationship-based in a collectivism society, which means in this case, employees in Singapore tend to spend a longer time to be experienced and to get a higher position in his or her career. However, in task-based culture, the promotion opportunities value more of the personal or professional ability, or saying a younger staff can be a senior manager of an older staff if he or she is capable of doing so. If Domino's can successfully implement this in its Singapore subsidiaries, it's expected to attract more qualified candidates to apply for the job, and more importantly, to motivate staff to think about these questions: how to create value for Domino's, how to get his or her job better done. To perform better tends to lead the staff to a higher position and make him or her earn more salary. This would be pretty attractive to everyone, especially to young employees. In addition, all these actions should match with local cultural environment. And this way, the efficiency can be substantially boosted and the cultural differences can be converted into an advantage.
In the corporate structure of Singapore, there's a big difference between corporate culture of America. Therefore, we feel that establishing defined corporate culture aspects such as power distances or collectivism helps ensure that both managers and employees are on the same page when it comes down to tasks that need to be accomplished. Certain activities such as team bonding activities can help foster close bonds and bring people from two different working cultures together, improving cross-cultural cooperation. In the case of masculinity and femininity, it is important to educate managers and employees, as well as establish clear policies against discrimination and gender inequality. For work ethic and behaviors, it is important for corporate members to